thing makes such a difference to the entire community at NYSSCA. Hey, I want to say welcome, Deanna, Director of Students. Okay, Deanna, now you're going to have to come off the camera to say Director of Student Services in HCSD. I don't know what that stands for.
I'm at home, so you might hear little ones.
That's okay.
That's Hudson City School District. That's in Columbia County.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. And I'm so interested in how you you found out about this webinar.
I like to research, and it's just, it just happened to come up in my travels, and I said, "Yep, I'd love to see."
Excellent. That's wonderful. Thanks for coming, Deanna. Anybody else want to say hello? I see a lot of names. Shout out where you're from. I love this is my jam. When we have somebody from Buffalo, somebody from way upstate, like Plattsburgh area, Middle region, Capital region, Rochester region, and then Long Island region. Come on, let's see if we can find somewhere everywhere in the state. Put in where you're from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I see Karen and Christina and Millie, Zane. Maybe people are being shy. Okay.
Sounds like romper room, Lisa.
I know.
I'm dating myself, but it sounds
that's
like
okay.
romper room.
Absolutely. So we have Ballston Spa, which is such a beautiful area. Ryan from where is Sackett's Harbor? Mount Vernon.
Up by Oswego.
Up by Oswego. Lake Placid. One of my favorite races I ever did was in Lake Placid. Oh, that was beautiful. And Shauna from Poughkeepsie, New York, and Watertown. And welcome to Millie from Brooklyn. Brooklyn in the house. And my sister lives in Williamsville. Hi, Karen. Go ring my sister's doorbell. Hey, Ray is from. Karen, are you in Williamsville?
I live right next door to Williamsville in a little suburb called Amherst.
Okay, my sister lives in Amherst.
Well,
Tartan Lane.
Tartan Lane. I don't know it.
Okay, now you're gonna have to look it up, and you can just be a strange person and say, "Hey, your sister says hello."
I will.
Hey, Ray, how are you?
Doorbell cam.
Yeah, there you go. And then I'll get this text. Lise, did you send somebody? And I'll say, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Hey, Shannon.
This is going to sound really cool when somebody plays it back on YouTube. They're going to say, I thought this webinar was about DASA.
It is geography. It is, but it's so important to know where
I'm being silly. I'm being silly.
And Alicia from Corning, I'm so wondering if you ever saw any of the exhibitors who were on the Blown Away competition. If you've heard about Blown Away and if you've ever seen that, I would love to hear that.
Hey, sure.
Hey, sure. We have people from all over. That makes me so, so happy.
Okay, so what do you think? Good time to start?
I think.
Ready when you are.
I'll just keep saying hi to everybody if you don't stop me.
Okay. So welcome to our DASA virtual workshop in our series of professional development presentations. And we have a disclaimer. This is our intellectual property. Sounds really cool. And it's going to end up on our YouTube channel, which is linked there. Our presenters today are Lisa Milady and Nancy DeStefano, who are going to introduce themselves.
All right. I will introduce myself first. My name is Lisa Milady. I'm the current president of NYSSCA. It has been a lovely year, and this is something that I have wanted to do throughout the year. The idea of being a DASA coordinator brings many people feelings of unease. They're not sure about it, and it has been a discussion that we've had on the board. I've actually reached out to NYSSCA, and then I reached out to New York State Ed. How can I help counselors feel comfortable and understand the protocol and what it takes to be a DASA coordinator and if they should or should not be? And I circled back and landed with speaking with the lovely Nancy DiStefano, and she will give you her background. And I am so incredibly pleased and blessed to have her be able to discuss this with you. We are going to have an educational piece, and of course, we will have questions and answers at the end. So thank you for being here. And also, if ever there's anything that DASA can do, that NYSSCA can do for you, please be sure to email president@nyssca.org. And we always are striving to serve you and make sure you have all the tools you need to help our students. So thank you so much for being here today. And I would love to recognize we have Mary Banaszak, who is the president-elect. She'll be taking care of you come the next year. And we have Dr. Kathleen Corbett, who is currently our one of our chair people. And I know Ray Polk is on here. If there's any other, Ray, if you want to say hey, he is a current board member.
Good afternoon, everyone.
If there's any other board members I missed, let me know. We are so grateful for our board. And again, if anybody's interested in being part of NYSSCA, send an email. We need as much help as we can get. So I'm going to be quiet and let Nancy take it from here.
Thank you, Lisa. So welcome to our workshop for school counselors on DASA. Our goal today is really to assist you in understanding the Dignity Act requirements and your role as a school counselor. Our agenda today, we've done introductions. I'm Nancy DiStefano. I am a former school counselor and a former director of counseling, as well as a retired assistant superintendent from the Washington, Saratoga, Warren, Hamilton, Essex, BOCES, which is in the Saratoga region of the state. So those are our introductions. We're going to review the components of the Dignity Act. We're going to talk about what is DASA. We're going to go through some definitions. We are not going to spend much time on tolerance and bias checks, but I wanted to leave that information in the slideshow for you to go back to at a later time. We'll talk about school responsibilities, DASA reporting requirements, and resources that we have available for you. So you've already met Lisa and myself, so we're going to skip right through this and move on to the next slide and get right into our content. So everyone has the right to be respected and the responsibility to respect others. That is the premise of which DASA was developed on. So what is DASA? DASA stands for Dignity for All Students Act. The Dignity Act was signed into law on September 13th in 2010 and took effect on July 1st, 2012. The Dignity Act for All Students was established to protect all students from harassment, bullying, and discrimination. I have a link here on this slide that is to the State Ed website on Dignity for All Students Act. So you will have that as a resource as well. Now, if I can just get back to the PowerPoint. There we go. So the intent behind the Dignity Act was really to create a state law that is intended to create learning environments in schools that are free of discrimination and harassment for all students. It protects against all forms of harassment, particularly those that are based on harassment and discrimination that are based on the 11 identified classes that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But it also is a state law that requires that no student should be subjected to discrimination, harassment, or bullying by employees or students on school property or off school property at school functions or electronically, and when the act may be creating a risk of disruption of the school environment for the student. So it's really about creating safe environments for students. The Dignity Act was adopted and went into effect in 2012, but it did have some amendments later on that followed. In 2013, it was amended to include cyberbullying, as well as the definition of emotional harm.
Did we lose?
This year. Oh. Our presenter
We
disappeared.
lost Nancy. So while we're waiting for Nancy to come back in, I want to
And now a song. No.
And now a song. Here we go. Well, actually, I'm just curious, of the people who are here, does anybody want to shout out about their feelings about DASA and why you chose to attend today? Shannon, I give you a lot of credit. I always am in favor of people who put on their videos. Let us see each other.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am a native of New York, and I recently got a school counseling job in the Poughkeepsie City School District. So DASA is something that we present to our sixth grade students as they are going through each grade level, I should say. And I just felt that it was necessary for me to come here and learn a little bit more about it to be better aware of how to present it to the students.
I love that. And I love your dedication as you just started up in Poughkeepsie. So that's wonderful. Anybody else want to share their reason for coming today? Go ahead, Ray. You got your hand up?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I've been involved with DASA. I became a school counselor in 2010, and it was right around the time that DASA was starting. My district did a big thing getting the counselors involved. So I've been part of the DASA committee in my building and creating it. And I just want to always stay current with the most up-to-date and latest practices.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ray. And so you've been involved since the inception, since the very beginning?
Right, correct.
Perfect. And you know what? Ray, I know, is in the middle school level. Shannon, what level are you in?
Middle school also.
Middle school as well. Kelsey's got her hand up. Kelsey, please share.
Hi, I am a school counselor also, and in my district, the school counselors are the building level coordinators, and our social workers are the district level coordinators. So I was hoping to hear more on NYSSCA's view of the role of the school counselor in the DASA process, since sometimes things can get a little bit blurred between counseling and discipline.
Yes. And that's one of the things we'll absolutely talk about at the end. Welcome back, Nancy DiStefano.
I have no idea what happened, but let's try this again.
It's okay. We were just chit-chatting about the people's motivation to attend today. So that was a great...
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So what slide did I leave off on?
That's past us, past that.
You saw this one?
Yep.
Yeah.
We got the
Okay. So it was on the amendments that you lost me?
Yep.
I have no idea what happened. So let's start with the amendment. So in 2012, the Dignity Act was adopted, but there were three different amendments that occurred later. In 2013, it was amended to include cyberbullying and the definition of emotional harm. In 2018, it was amended to include guidance to school districts for creating safe and supportive school environments for transgender and gender nonconforming students. It also, under this act, gave specific examples of situations that were violations of the Dignity Act that had to be reported. Those included situations where students were denied access to school facilities such as bathrooms, locker rooms, or going on field trips. They were also had dress code applications where they might have been too stringent, where students weren't allowed to dress in their transgender clothing. They may not have been allowed to dress in their ethnic attire that they chose to. So it protected them against dress code violations that wouldn't allow for that. It also protected them against the purposeful mispronunciation of names and use of pronouns. So this one was a very big revision with regard to transgender and gender nonconforming students. The 2021 Crown Act was signed into law that provided support for students for not allowing discrimination based on race that includes hairstyles and traits that are associated with race. So it protected against that. So those are the three amendments to the Dignity Act that we have had so far. The Dignity Act has several components to it. They include policies that districts must create. They include the creation of a Dignity Act coordinator or coordinators. It includes instruction for students that must cover civility, citizenship, and character education. It also includes requirements for school employee training, school employee reporting, and annual reporting that occurs to the district and to state education. We're going to get into each of these a little bit more as we move through the program too. So basically, it covers the fact that no student shall be subjected to harassment, discrimination, or bullying by employees or students. The Dignity Act, however, does not cover employee to employee harassment, bullying, or discrimination. That is covered by your school district policies through the HR department. So this only addresses student related issues. When we're talking about discrimination, there are 11 areas or classes that are protected under DASA. These include actual or perceived race, color, weight, national origin, ethnic group, religion, religious practice, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex. Color refers to the apparent pigmentation of the skin, especially as an indication or possible indication of race. Gender refers to a person's actual or perceived sex and includes a person's gender identity or expression. National origin means a person's country of birth or ancestors' country of birth. Ethnic group refers to a group of people who identify with each other through common heritage, including language, culture, and often a shared common religion or ideology that stresses ancestry. Disability refers to the physical, mental, or medical impairment that results from anatomical or physiological issues. It also includes a record of such an impairment. Race is described as the groups to which individuals belong, identify with, or belong in the eyes of the community. Religion means a specific fundamental group of beliefs and practices that are generally agreed upon by a large number of the group. Religious practice means a term including practices and observances such as attending worship services, wearing religious garb or symbols, praying at prescribed times, displaying religious objects, things like that. Sex is the biological and physiological characteristics that define men and women. It is different than gender. People may have gender identities or gender expressions that differ from their sex. Sexual orientation means actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, or bisexuality. And weight means, aside from the obvious of the physical sciences, the word is used in reference to a person's size. So those are the meanings of what each of these 11 areas cover. There are 4 other definitions that are related to DASA that I think are really the core of the Dignity Act. These include discrimination, material incident of harassment, bullying, and or discrimination, bullying and or discrimination, and emotional harm. So I'm not going to read through all of these. I'm just going to kind of summarize them, but this includes some of the legal terminology in here too. But basically, discrimination is surprisingly not specifically defined in the Dignity Act. It, however, would include any form of discrimination against students that is prohibited by your state law, and it covers the 11 classes that we talked about previously. A material incident of harassment, bullying, and or discrimination means that it is a single verified incident or a series of related verified incidents where a student is subject to harassment, bullying, or discrimination by a student or an employee. When we talk about harassment or bullying, it really means the creation of a hostile environment that by conduct or by verbal threats, intimidation, or abuse, and this includes cyberbullying. It also addresses the areas where a student is unreasonably or substantially interfered with their educational performance by being bullied or harassed. It also can be that there is a fear of physical harm or injury to the student that may prevent them from being able to come to school. Emotional harm is what takes place in the context of harassment or bullying, means that it is harmful to the student's emotional well-being, and it is created through a hostile school environment. This often can be pervasive and substantially interfere with the student's education. So those are the 4 primary areas that when we think about harassment and bullying, that the Dignity Act actually addresses. So let's talk a little bit about what bullying is. According to the United States Department of Education, bullying generally involves the following characteristics. It is persistent. It is repeated. There's often a targeted individual. Sometimes individuals are targeted. It is intended to cause fear or harm physically and or emotionally. It is intended to hurt feelings as well. It reduces the self-esteem or reputation of the targeted person. And there is an imbalance of power, whether it is perceived or actual, there is an imbalance of power that goes along with bullying. And bullying and discrimination are 2 different situations. When we talk about aggressive behaviors that are intentional and involve an imbalance of power or strength, it typically is repeated over time, and bullying can take on many different forms. The 5 primary areas that bullying takes on, or the 5 forms, are the physical, verbal, social, emotional, and cyberbullying. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about each type of bullying and have some examples for you as well. Verbal bullying can simply be defined as saying or writing mean and nasty things. And nope, words can hurt. Words can hurt. Words can break down someone's self-esteem. They can break down their self-value, and they can make them feel not worthy and not valued. Verbal bullying is the most common type of bullying. Girls are more likely to engage in verbal bullying than boys. Verbal bullying behaviors include, but are not exclusive to this. They include teasing, taunting, name calling, threatening others, spreading rumors, and gossiping. Social or psychological bullying is sometimes referred to as relational bullying. This involves hurting someone's reputation or relationships. It is characterized as indirect behavior. Girls are also more likely than boys to use social exclusion when it comes to bullying. Social bullying behaviors include threats, leaving someone out on purpose and excluding them from groups or activities, telling or ordering one person not to be friends with someone, spreading rumors, embarrassing or taunting someone in public, sending mean or threatening notes, emails, text messages, messages on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, or whatever. And this may also move over into the cyberbullying area as well. But I think as we go through these, I think of kids in situations where I've had to work through things like this with kids, and they've been experiencing social and psychological bullying through these same behaviors.
And I just want to jump in and say, on an elementary level, the gaming sites, there are, when students are talking to other students, and I actually had a student who felt that they were being stalked within the game because every time she asked a student to leave, he kept coming back under a different name. So it has so many different levels. You have to be very aware. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely. And gaming sites comes up when we talk about cyberbullying too. So physical bullying is the type of bullying that's really obvious. It's attempts or succeeds at hurting a person physically or damaging their personal possessions. Boys are more likely to engage in physical bullying than girls are, but that is not to say that girls do not get involved in physical bullying. Behaviors in physical bullying include hitting, kicking, punching, spitting, tripping, pushing, taking or breaking someone's belongings, making mean or rude hand gestures. I'm sure there's others that are not listed here as well, that include and cover physical bullying. Cyberbullying is the bullying that involves the use of information and communication technologies to support their deliberate and repeated and hostile behavior by an individual or group, and it is intended to hurt others. Common ways of cyberbullying that we've talked about already include social media websites like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, text messaging, Snapchat, online gaming, as Lisa had mentioned, and sexting. And I'm sure that there are other ways in which students can use technology in ways to cyberbully another student. So those are the 5 areas of bullying that we talked about. The next area is on microaggressions and implicit bias. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now because we really don't have the time to do this, and this takes a little bit of time to spend, but I wanted to include these slides in here for you to go back to later. But we're going to just briefly really go through them very quickly. Microaggressions are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, environmental slights and snubs or insults that are derogatory and actually marginalize group membership for kids. Some examples are saying not bad for a girl, treating someone with a disability as if they are helpless or less capable, or calling a woman sweetie. They can be harmful, and here's a list of how they can be harmful, but we're not going to go through this at this point. I do want to talk a little bit about bias check and implicit bias. When we get into implicit bias, really, this is this is about our own judgments and decisions that we make that are influenced by our unconscious mind more than our conscious mind. And that's what implicit bias is. And there's these slides include some more information on implicit bias. There's also a really good video on this slide that is a good example of implicit bias with a social worker and a young man. And it can be very emotional too. But these are things to think about as you are looking into DASA. These are activities that you could do with yourself or with your colleagues with regard to implicit bias and microaggressions. So let's talk a little bit about school responsibilities. There's nothing in the DASA or Dignity Act for all students that says school counselors have to be the Dignity Act coordinator. And I know that's been a question that has come up. It does, however, reference school counselors or social workers or psychologists as being good people to utilize in that role. And that's because of our training in counseling and our ability to work with students and counsel and be empathetic. So when we look at the school responsibilities, the school has a number of responsibilities that include policies and procedures and other things. But the first thing is to provide students, staff, and persons in parental relation with information about DASA. And that includes identifying who the Dignity Act coordinator or coordinators are. And I do recommend that schools have more than one Dignity Act coordinator. It's a lot of work for one person, or it can be. Information needs to be provided to families in languages other than English when necessary. This is the same requirement that you have for any information that you send home. It needs to be provided in their home language. Districts also need to develop policies and procedures and guidelines that require a school environment free from harassment, bullying, and discrimination, as well as cyberbullying. And there's a link here to, this is where I lost you guys. So if I lose you guys, I'm going to be very upset. This is a link to the state ed document for districts to have what their school responsibilities are. Let's see if I can do this without losing everybody.
Have faith, Nancy. It's going to be good.
There we go. And that resource will be in the folder that we send to you also. School districts have to have policies as well regarding the Dignity Act for all students. And the policies need to serve the following functions. They should identify administrative designees to receive reports. That is not the same as the Dignity Act coordinator. The policy should enable students and persons in parental relation to make a report. So your reporting opportunities need to be available on your website. It requires school personnel to notify an administrator of a report within 1 day and file a written report no later than 2 days after the original report. It also requires a thorough investigation be completed promptly after the report. There's a lot of requirements for school districts. It requires the school to take prompt action to end harassment, bullying, and/or discrimination. It prohibits retaliation against anyone making a report or assisting with the investigation. And this is a very important piece to remember too, because staff can sometimes be afraid to make a report when they witness something because they don't want there to be any retaliation, or kids could be afraid to make a report if they witness something. And this is an important piece to help them understand. Develop a school strategy to prevent harassment, bullying, and discrimination. Require school leaders to regularly report data trends to the superintendent. Require school leaders to notify local law enforcement when behavior is believed to constitute criminal conduct. I have not had to do that very frequently in my experience, but every once in a while it may come up. So when we're talking about school district policies, it also includes all school personnel should receive a copy of the district policies that includes the reporting process, and this should be done at least annually. When I was at BOCES, we did this as part of our opening day training sessions. We would do a 20 to 30 minutes on the Dignity Act for all students. We'd review our data from the previous year, so they knew how many initial reports we had, how many material incidents we had, and what they were related to as far as bullying and DASA. It also needs to ensure that the district's policies and procedures, including an incident report form, are posted on the district's website. And there's an implementation link guide link here. This is the original implementation guide from 2013, but it is about 25 pages long and it talks about what districts need to do in greater detail. Training for school staff. So all employees, including instructional and non-instructional staff, must receive DASA training. We did the DASA training through our DASA coordinators. I had 14 DASA coordinators at BOCES because we were such a large organization. And the DASA coordinators did the opening day training for staff. That's not to say that you have to do it. That's just the way we did it. But part of that training should include raising awareness and sensitivity to potential acts of harassment, bullying, and or discrimination. It should address social patterns of harassment, bullying, and or discrimination, the identification and mitigation of such acts and strategies for effectively addressing them, and how teachers can address situations in their classrooms that might stop it right there before it goes beyond anything else. So giving teachers strategies on how to stop it in their classrooms can be very helpful to minimize any bullying or discrimination. It enables employees to prevent and respond to incidents within the context of education law. It makes school employees aware of the effects of bullying and or discrimination on students too. So we showed a lot of videos, and sometimes those videos can be very emotional when it came to training. And then the Dignity Act coordinator must be trained to handle human relations in the areas of the protected classes as well.
And I love how you're pointing out, teach the teachers. And it's so important that the teachers are armed and ready to handle situations and know when to reach out. It is wonderful when your school has an absolute protocol. Here is what you do if you have a suspicion, if you have a concern, and to include the entire team, not just the DASA coordinator. I do believe it's good practice to include the social worker and the psychologist and the counselor and the principal and the AP, because we know how fast and busy school days are. And it's important that these things are taken care of in a timely way.
Absolutely. And that's why it's nice if you have more than one DASA coordinator as well. So districts have to develop school forms, and there are forms that State Ed has come up with that will have access to in a couple of slides moving forward. But the form must include the date. That date should include the date of the report as well as the date of the incident. It should include the name of the student target, the name or names of aggressors, the name or names of witnesses and bystanders, a description of the incident, the name of the reporter. This can be anonymous, but it can be harder to follow up if the reporter makes it an anonymous report, but it is an option that they have. I also suggest adding the signature of the principal and the Dignity Act coordinator so we know that that report gets to them and they see it.
As counselors.
The form does need to be accessible on the school district website. And then once the report is completed, a thorough investigation needs to be done. Did we have a question? Okay. So moving on to reporting and the investigation process, there are 3 primary steps with this. You've got the incident report, the investigation process, and then your annual reporting to the district and to the state. This is a screenshot of the State Ed DASA report form, and there is a link to this report form on this page. What I would do with this report is it's a Word document on the State Ed website. I would take it and I would put my district's letterhead on it or my building letterhead on it and customize it to my district. It's a very thorough form. It can be the only form you use, so it could be what's on your website for parents to utilize. You could also create a 1-page report that then prompts you to fill out this with the DASA coordinator. It's up to you. We did a 1-page initial report and then use this report for the DASA coordinator to complete when they were doing their investigation. But that's entirely up to the school district and how they want to do it. But this report is very thorough and it's going to walk you through the investigation process as well. So all school employees have responsibilities when it comes to making reports. Any school employee who witnesses harassment, bullying, or discrimination, or receives an oral or written report from a student, they have 2 responsibilities. The first one is that they must give a verbal or written report to the Dignity Act coordinator no later than 1 school day after the incident comes to their attention. The sooner the better if it's time sensitive. And the importance of this is to really make sure that it doesn't get forgotten, it doesn't get buried in a pile of paper someplace, so that the Dignity Act coordinator can act on it and help prevent future incidents from happening. The second responsibility is that they must complete a written report no later than 2 school days after the oral report is made. And that written, that written report can be done and completed with the Dignity Act coordinator at the time they're making the initial verbal report as well. And sometimes it's easier to do that. So now that you've got the report, there has to be an investigation. And this is where utilizing your resource officers and mental health professionals can be very helpful. You may not be the Dignity Act coordinator, but you may be asked to help out in the investigation process. A team approach is the best way to collect all the information because students have different relationships with different people within the building. And when we're talking about an incident of bullying or harassment or discrimination, it's helpful to have someone that student is comfortable with to be in the meeting with them when they're talking about the situation, because it can be very emotional and difficult for them to do sometimes, whether they're the aggressor or whether they're the target. So typically the Dignity Act coordinator or an administrator will lead the investigation. I always would have a conversation with the Dignity Act coordinator and administrator together, and they would go off and they would do the investigation, usually collaboratively, and usually our mental health professionals would also be helping with that investigation. It's important to interview everyone who is involved, the target person, the aggressor, and the witnesses. But that interview should be done separately. This is not a mediation. It is not conflict resolution. And mediation and conflict resolution do not work in situations of bullying or harassment. It's important to use a calm, problem-solving, investigative approach to find out what happened, what was said, and what was done. Oftentimes, I would just have the student, if they didn't want to talk about it, have them write down what happened. And then I had a written documentation from them as to what happened. Identifying what the motive or intent was, whether it's anger, is a misguided joke, or is it really a threat of harm to the student's safety. Spending some time talking about past relationships and past history. Is this a one-time occurrence or is this repeated behavior? What the impact or perceived impact is on the targeted student on school functioning. Do they feel safe coming to school? Do they feel like they can walk down the hall in between classes safely and comfortably? And then after all that is done, contacting the persons that are in parental relations to those students interviewed and letting them know that they have been interviewed as part of a DASA investigation. And then you'll follow up later once it's resolved. Yes, Lisa.
I just wanted to pop in because, I've done a lot of DASA work in my school, and we have students who are comfortable in reporting and coming to you. I am in an elementary building, and the students will come off the bus and come in mass into my office to say, this happened. And it's so important when it comes to speaking to students one at a time. It'd be very easy for me to stand there and say, what happened, what happened, what happened, what happened. But taking their names and then coming back individually with the students, so to clearly understand what everybody did see. And I just want to say on an elementary level, I always draw pictures with the students when I'm sitting down. Where were you sitting on the bus? Where was somebody in the hallway? Helping students to really understand in the best way that they can express. Because we are looking for that motive, the intent, how many times has it happened before? And a great question for little ones is, did you see it or did you hear about it? Because a lot of kids, I heard it from so-and-so who heard it from so-and-so. And so I just wanted to throw out some ideas.
That happens at the middle school and high school level too, not just elementary. So this really is about the Dignity Act coordinator and the administrator working together. Your role, if you are not the Dignity Act coordinator, may be to assist with some of that investigation and some of those interviews. If you are the Dignity Act coordinator, it's going to be helping to lead the team members through this process. And again, school counselors are not required to be Dignity Act coordinators. Some districts may make that determination. It's a district determination at a local level to decide who the Dignity Act coordinators are. So once you've started the investigation, it's important to really respond quickly. The consequences are most effective when they directly address the problem and the context. A lot of times when you're talking about bullying or harassment or discrimination, it's about educating the student that is the aggressor. The most effective approach considers the following. You're going to think about the student's age and what is developmentally appropriate conduct for them. Think about the specific offense and the circumstances of the incident or incidents if it's multiple. What's the student's prior disciplinary record? Do they have some behaviors similar to this that might have given us a hint that this might be a situation where they were going to bully other kids? Input from persons in the parental relation, input from teachers, involvement and input from mental health professionals as appropriate. So if they're working with a counselor, that person may be a good person to lean on to help with talking to the student as well. And disability status, determine whether behavior is directly related to the disability if a student does have a disability. So once you've investigated an incident, the Dignity Act coordinator or the school leader needs to make a determination as to whether the incident is material. Now, I'm going to say here that this should be a collaboration between the Dignity Act coordinators, and the school leader. When I did this with my Dignity Act coordinators and principals, we did it together. We review the investigation, we talk about everything that was discovered and what we learned, and we'd make the determination together as to whether or not it was a material incident. Because one person looking through materials might miss some details, and having that conversation with multiple people that have been working on it can be helpful. So a material incident under DASA is a single or series of verified, and I stress verified incidents by a student and/or employee on school property, out of school function, or off school property where the act may create a risk of substantial disruption at school. And this includes cyberbullying. So when this happens outside of the school day, such as cyberbullying or social bullying, and it comes into school and it becomes a disruption to the educational process at school, it then becomes our problem to address. So this includes conduct of such a severe or pervasive nature that it has one or more of the following effects to be a material incident. It interferes with the student's educational performance, opportunities, or benefits. It affects the student's mental, emotional, and physical well-being. It causes emotional harm that unreasonably and substantially interferes with the student's education. And it causes or could reasonably or be expected to cause a student to fear for their physical safety. So those are some of the criteria that you take into consideration when determining if it's a material incident, as well as the 11 areas of protection. So let's talk about reporting. So there are different forms for reporting. There's an initial report sample that we've already looked at with the state ed template. And then there's a sample tracking sheet. So you've got to complete the incident report form. This is one example. It's just a Word document. It has everything that the state ed form has, just in a different layout. Then you've got the DASA report form from state ed that we've already taken a look at, that you can take and adapt and modify to be specific to your school district. And then the state ed first came out with a tracking template that made it very easy to summarize reporting at the end of the year. That tracking template I was not able to find, but I'm including a tracking template that I used that was developed from the state ed form. So this is a tracking template that includes information about the victim, the target, the accused, the report, the DASA staff that did the investigation. We used an initial form. So is there an initial form or not? Then the DASA form, is it a material incident, and a description? And we uploaded the documents and links to this form. And then at the end of the year, when I had to do reporting on it, it was easy to go through the tracking sheet like this and make the report to the principal, or in my situation, I made it to the district superintendent. So this form was helpful in not making me go through every DASA report that I got from all the schools. So it's up to you to use this if you want to or not, but it is a tracking form that helps keep information in one location and summarizes it all.
Just curious, in your experience, who usually does the state ed piece of that?
Usually someone from the district office will do the state ed piece of it. We're going to talk about that
Just
next.
wanted to shout out to the counselors. That's usually central office.
So
Yeah.
don't panic because
Yeah.
you will in all likelihood not be doing the state ed reporting. But if you are the Dignity Act coordinator, you will need to make reports to your building principal. Your building principal is then going to make those reports up to the district office, and someone in the central office is going to do the reporting to state ed. So how that reporting is compiled and maintained at your school district is a local decision.
Mhm.
I'm just giving you some tools that have worked for me in the past that may work for you. And you may have your own already if you're involved in doing this. Annual Dignity Act reporting is performed using a standardized online format provided by the New York State Education Department. It is called the School Safety and Educational Climate Report, and you will not have to do that. I did parts of it, but you will not have to do that.
Nancy, Bob has a very interesting question.
What's that?
Is a school consequence, like out of school or in school suspension, required for an incident to be material?
No, it is not. In fact, you don't necessarily, depending on your policies and procedures, you might not have a consequence that is disciplinary. It may be educational, it may be community service, it could be anything that the district has determined appropriate for whatever the act was.
Yeah, short-term counseling
Yes, short-term counseling,
with goals.
awareness counseling, it could be a lot of different things, but it does not have to be a in-school or out-of-school suspension. It's a good question. So when we talk about a school building to district reporting, your policies and procedures may include, these are not things they have to include, but these are things that are suggested to be included through the Dignity Act. So the Dignity Act coordinator would review the incident report forms regularly. This says at least once per semester. My coordinators did it once a year at the end of the year, and they'd bring me a packet of information. The Dignity Act coordinator provides summary data for the semester to the school leader, including the following: the number of incidents reported that summer. This is where your tracking device is going to come in very handy, because all you would have to do is give them the tracking device, and it's all right there. So it would include the number of incidents reported that semester, number of cyberbullying incidents reported, number of reported incidents found to be material, and the type of bias involved in the incidents, if any. And the reason it asks for these particular items is these are the things that have to be reported on the SSEC. Also, that what needs to be reported is if there's physical altercations or physical with verbal. So it looks for all of those things. Typically, your school leader is going to review and collate the summary data from your Dignity Act coordinator and include this in the annual report to the superintendent. And then district document retention includes report forms and investigative materials. Now I've included here on this a link for DASA implementation self-assessment. If you are the Dignity Act coordinator or become the Dignity Act coordinator in the future, this is a state ed document that is basically a survey of where school's at with implementation for the Dignity Act for all students. And then let's talk a little bit about district to state ed reporting, because it's important for you to know what needs to be sent up to state ed if you are the Dignity Act coordinator. So each year the superintendent is going to review each principal's annual summary report. The superintendent then provides a certified account of incidents for the school year from July 1 to June 30th to state ed. That's through the SSEC. All DASA incident reports are filed or maintained electronically in a central location. So you can either keep the paper copy of them or you can scan them and keep them electronically. And they are required to be kept for the period of time required by the New York State Records Retention Rules. You may not know what those are, but someone at your district office knows what those are. The last time I checked, there was no deadline on when to get rid of DASA report information. So it was being kept indefinitely. They review that New York State Records Retention Rules like every 5 years. So they may come out with some changes in that in the near future. The other piece to know is that DASA incident reports should not be filed as part of the student's school record. They should be kept in a separate file, and the district should determine where those files are kept. Now, they may be kept at the building level, so they may be kept in the principal's office. I had them in my office as assistant superintendent of curriculum, so they were kept in my office, but that would be important if you're the DASA coordinator to know where those records need to be sent and how they need to be sent, whether it's electronically or hard copy. But they should not be part of the student's school record. So prevention starts long before an incident occurs. And the more we can do in the prevention area, the better and safer our schools are going to be. So developing positive school community family partnerships, supportive academic learning environments, having safe physical and disciplinary environments, coordinating your mental health, including trauma sensitivity, social emotional learning that is integrated into academics, which a lot of you have social emotional curriculums that you use, and those are integrated into your classroom activities and into school activities. And restorative practices are all potential ways to help with prevention and to minimize and prevent bullying, harassment, and discrimination in your schools. When you're talking about changing the climate of schools, it's a very challenging thing to do, but you need to plan for that change. You need to provide support to students and persons that are in the parental relationship with the change in school climates. You need to take actions to improve school climates like behavioral intervention contracts, teaching dignity with respect, using your SEL curriculums to help with improving school climate, and then really developing and refining your policies that the school district has, which would probably not fall on you to do.
I just want
Other
to
ways, go ahead.
No, I wanted to say how important the school climate piece is to the Dignity Act, because this is where we as counselors in this very tumultuous kind of world that we're living in, we want everyone to have dignity. And as counselors, we are standing on the law. And the law states that we need to make sure everyone feels safe. And if we use this piece to create a climate that has dignity for all, we're not judge, it's not our judgment, and it's not us bringing ideas, we're bringing the law. And so in this climate where things are a little hard right now, it is a safe spot to be for you to advocate for your students.
And some of those ways are getting students engaged in positive pro-social activities within the school. It gives them an opportunity to bond with staff, and parents can come and do things as well. So really getting students engaged and parents engaged in school activities can help improve that school climate. Also empowering students to feel safe to be able to report and speak out against bullying or discrimination or harassment, and to really make a change in their ability to feel comfortable doing that. And then, district policies and practices. It's more about the practice at this point than it is the policy. Making sure that we are providing those safe environments for students to come to school and feel safe and feel respected and feel valued. Those are the things that make a difference in school climate as well. So the DASA is connected very strongly to social emotional learning. It's connected to restorative practices, and definitely connected to DEI. So those are all areas that DASA infiltrates through different areas across our school curriculums and what we're teaching in our classrooms.
Hey,
These are
I just have a quick question. Does a DASA report have to be related to a bias or protected class? Many of our reports are checked other.
So DASA covers bullying as well, so that bullying isn't necessarily related to those protective classes.
Right. So
it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
It has a lot to do with the intent, and it has a lot to do with if it's repetitive in nature.
Correct.
And the imbalance of power.
Correct.
Okay.
And it has to do with the student feeling safe coming to school and how it affects the student's education and their ability to participate in their education.
So I want to say, Caitlin, that's why they have the other. You're
So
good.
these are just a handful of resources. Also included is the DASA training resources on the Google Drive, which is going to have everything that we looked at and all the resources that were throughout the PowerPoint. These are just a handful of resources. There are so many resources out there that are really good resources. I always go to the Stop Bullying website. There's tons of curriculum on there for all grade levels and ages. And then the Safe and Supportive Learning website also has a lot of curriculum and materials available too. But there's a lot out there that you probably have more of than what's listed here. This is just a few things to help get you started if you don't know where to look. The other piece is we included some inspirational videos and music. There's tons of these as well, but these are ones that, Lisa and I took a look at and we liked. One is the song Imagine by the Pentatonics. Another, which we're going to try and show to you before we leave, is Everyone Belongs video. It's a cute, wonderful 4-minute video that is appropriate for all age groups. We Are One World video is another one that is very engaging and entertaining and a lot of dancing and singing in it. The anti-bullying dance for kids is really elementary. Although your high school kids may enjoy it and laugh at it, but it is really intended for elementary kids. There's a video called Under the Surface, which is about evoking empathy for students that are going through bullying and discrimination. And then for the adults in the world, if you haven't seen it, Rita Pearson's TED Talks on Every Kid Needs a Champion is one of the best TED Talks on supporting students who need that little extra push and need to be believed in and need someone to be their champion and support them through challenges.
And I think it gives you the courage to keep at it because helping students and overcoming challenges is hard, especially now. I give everybody credit being here in May as we are at the end of our school year. I love Rita Pearson because it makes us feel good about who we are and what we do day in and day out.
Absolutely. All right, questions.
We did have a couple of questions, and I knew in the beginning of the chats that they would be answered in the presentation. So I just want to scroll back. And actually, Trisha had asked a question for clarification regarding investigations and who should be doing them. Then once a report is filed. I think, Trisha, was your question answered? Because we did go over that. While I'm scrolling through this, anybody with questions, please, or comments or thoughts?
Okay.
I'm listening, and I see that there's several like new counselors and or grad students on this. And when you listen to this presentation, it sounds like you're going to be spending all your time on it.
Oh yeah,
it does. Yes.
But when you look at the reports that are actually turned into the state, a school's going to have 2 or 3 of these a year. It's not going to be. It's not something that you're spending an enormous amount of time on. It's important, and you got to do it right.
Yeah. And part of the education is telling everybody. Somebody will walk down the hallway and say, I was bullied. Well, what happened? Their backpack hit me in the head, and so it's a lot of education comes in to teach students what's bullying and how to deal with these the normal everyday events of life. And it's really important, I believe, to have that education piece where you are actively going through the many incidents that are not DASA related, so that when that incident does occur, that you students are comfortable talking to you, trusting you, and you have a strong protocol within your building to handle any situation that arises. I see Ray Polk has his hand up. Go, Ray.
Actually, I find it pretty surprising the few that are turned into different from other school districts, because I deal with a lot of them in our building. Not all of them are founded, but we do a lot of investigations, I think, because we do make sure we educate the students about what bullying is, what bullying isn't, and the protected classes and whatnot. But one of the things related to us as school counselors in our district, and specifically my building, they had the counseling staff as the coordinators, and they changed it to just having us on the committee to do the investigative piece, because there are times of the year, like in our district, we do annual reviews at the same time, pretty much from April through May. Counselors, social workers, psychologists are all tied up sometimes 3, 4 days straight in a row. So we're not able to respond to it. So we were removed as the investigator. I'm sorry, we were removed as the coordinator that, did the coordinating. And now we're just on the investigative side to help with doing it.
I had classroom teachers, I had school counselors, I had social workers, I had a lot. That's why we had multiple Dignity Act coordinators in each building too. Because if someone was out, there needed to be someone there besides the principal to be able to handle that too. And then you have a team, like you said, to work on this together. Because some of this can be very stressful and emotional too. And it's hard to be the only person doing that. So it's really nice if you can have multiple people who are coordinators so that there's different people that people are comfortable going to too, because not everyone is comfortable going to the same person all the time. So it's nice to have that option for staff, and it takes the pressure off of one person too.
Mhm.
And it really is best done as a team.
Yeah, and it is. And the students learn to trust more than just one person, that we're all in it helping together. Kelsey would like to know, should the call regarding a founded DASA to the perpetrator be done by the administrator? And also, can the teacher who writes up serve as the initial report? We're getting some questions now, which is really great.
So do you mean to the parents of the perpetrator?
I think so. I think, Kelsey, is that what you mean? Who should call the parent? One new message. Hold on, I'm going down.
Kelsey says yes.
Yeah, she says yes.
So that's up to the district to decide who that should be. Sometimes our dignity coordinators wanted to do it because they had a good relationship with the parent and wanted to talk to them. Sometimes the social worker who wasn't a Dignity Act coordinator wanted to do it because they had a good relationship, so they would do it with the Dignity Act coordinator. And sometimes the principal did it because it was best coming from the principal. So it kind of depended on what the circumstances were and who had the best relationship with the parents to make that call. Because that's a tough call to hear as a parent too.
Yeah. And remember, we're a community and we need to take into consideration who is the best person. It's important not to say this is always going to be that person. You have to always take things on a case by case basis. Before I see Caitlin has another question, but I wanted to say this. I've heard this question many times. As a school counselor, I'm doing an investigation. I don't feel comfortable doing discipline. Nancy, do you want to just talk about the differentiation of that for a moment?
Can you say that again, Lisa?
Oh, I've heard the question many times. As the DASA coordinator, I am a school counselor and I'm doing the investigation. I do not feel comfortable giving discipline.
Right.
I know in my experience, I don't give the discipline. It's my responsibility to understand intent, to understand the steps of where, what, who, why. I get all the information. And because I have a relationship with the kids, I can really understand the process behind the incident. And then I take that information and share it with my administrator. And I just wanted you to
So nowhere in the Dignity Act does it state that the Dignity Act coordinator determines discipline. And there, as Bob had asked before, there isn't always discipline that's going to come with it. There might be consequences, but they're going to be different. And the discipline, if there is discipline to be done, discipline typically is done by a certified administrator. It is not the responsibility anywhere in the law that the Dignity Act coordinator be the one to determine that. It may be something where you're providing education to the student on discrimination or social emotional learning behaviors. It's going to educate the student. And you may be the one that does that, or there may be another counselor that does that, or a social worker that does that, or a psychologist. But there's nothing in the Dignity Act that states the Dignity Act coordinator determines discipline. If there is discipline to be given out, that is typically done at the responsibility of an administrator. I want to go back to the question Caitlin had about the DASA report related to bias or protected classes and their checked other. You'll notice that when we talked about the 11 protected classes, other is not on there. It came off of the DASA report incident several years ago, so it's not an other. So when you're looking at a DASA report, and it should be related to the bias or protected classes, Mary's response is correct. If there is protected factors that fall under DASA, that's what DASA covers. Other behaviors might be addressed, like the bullying, which we talked about, but it may not be DASA. Is that clear, or is it still muddy?
No, Caitlin had another question.
No, but okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's the same, Caitlin. We have been told that if a comment has anything to do with a protected class, then it's automatically filed as a DASA. Is that accurate?
You have to go through the process of investigation to determine what the intent is behind that behavior.
And I think the last question, is there a legal time frame to make the parent-family call? We always call the same day, but it gets challenging if it's reported at the end of the day.
There's not a legal time frame in the Dignity Act laws that I'm aware of. There may be policies within your school district about making calls to parents before the end of the day or before the student leaves that you would need to see if that applies to any DASA reporting. It always ends up being the end of the day because it may take you the whole day to do the investigation.
Exactly.
It's just the way it sometimes happens, because you're trying to touch base with different kids, and sometimes a student that you need to talk to may not be there that day either. So you may not be able to complete the investigation, but you still want to make that connection to parents if you can. But unfortunately, by the time you get through everything and you get the report and you get the investigation, underway, it may be the end of the day frequently.
Always. As today, I was
always the end of the day, and
Right.
an hour after you're supposed to leave, right?
Always on Friday.
Thank you, Nancy and Lisa. We're going into overtime here.
We are going into overtime.
And as we said earlier, you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to all these materials, as well as the recording of the session. And if you're attending, which you are, you're going to get a certificate of attendance, and you'll be asked to complete an evaluation in the email. So thanks for coming. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Nancy. I learned a lot.
And if you want to stay on,
yeah,
you want to stay on,
we're going to play Everyone Belongs.
But Caitlin.
Oh, you're gonna. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Caitlin is still not sure that it's not DASA if it doesn't include a protected class.
Oh.
That's okay. We can reach out to you, Caitlin, because there was a little confusion over yes or no. So if
other's no longer an option under there, other would be that it's not DASA, then it's bullying or something else that it's not related. But DASA should be related to a protected class. All right, I'm going to start Everyone Belongs for anyone who wants to stay on.
Oh, it's so worth it. Stay on. Thank you, everyone.
You both.
You were never really different. There's a lot that makes us same. I've been hiding in my own crowd. I don't even know your name. We're divine, so you decide when and I take the life out of the time. You can take it in stride. Now you time up so we can discover what makes us like one another.
Nancy, we don't see the video.
I'm sorry, and I wanna make it better.
We don't see the video.
Can't see the video?
No.
Everyone belongs. Yes, we are strong. Keep fading, so we're gonna change it. This is the one that we
All right, I don't know how to make it show the video.
Oh, the video is outstanding.
It is. So if you can
It
go
really
to
is.
that in the resources, it'd be awesome for you to be able to see.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great evening.